Hello, everyone. Hope everyone's doing well. This is earlier than our normal time, but we don't want to keep our guests up all the way past till the next day. So we have Dr. Isabel Aimee with us today. She has an interesting life and career, and of course, we're going to hear all about it. And what you do? Oh, you're posting. She's posting. She's telling everybody where we are.
We're live.
Welcome.
Hi. Thank you for coming on.
Oh, it is my pleasure. I'm really excited. It might be 10 o'clock at night, but I'm excited.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, usually by 10 o'clock, I'm starting to do that.
I like all the plants around behind you. They're pretty.
This is a friend of mine, a Russian painter. She's just wonderful with
Oh
plants.
my
I have
God.
to have this painting. Sofia Perina Miller. I'll give
I
you a
thought,
link. Mm.
okay, yeah. I thought they
Yeah,
were really
that's
cool.
beautiful. That's beautiful. Over here is the real ones, and the painting is wow.
Very pretty.
It's very nice. So tell us about Isabel Aimee.
Well, I could tell you lots of things about me, but maybe I'm more excited about the things I do. But the core of it, I care about children, always have, wanted to protect them since I was a child. And as that seems to be the core of humanity, I want families back together. I want them honored. And I want the human soul to be rediscovered. So basically, everything and anything I do revolves around that. I studied landscape architecture, but then moved on to be working in performing arts. But really, I'm a healer of all kinds of things, activating the human potential. That's me.
Oh,
That's
that's terrific. So
very cool.
you work in energy, or how do you work?
Many ways, but what I love to do, my ethos is always not here I am doing a thing to you or even for you. What I love to do is to find the buttons to awaken within the person their own tool set. So go
That's
in and give
exactly
them,
what.
yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah. So anything I do revolves around that. A lot of my work is now more openly spiritual, whereas for years I taught at a private school, performing arts, singing, acting, dance, and I was hiding essentially what I was doing, which was soul creativity activation. But it
Mhm.
was pretty, performing arts, but in a very different, more, well, it had a little more integrity than most performing arts work. But it was just to get the children aware that they had an inner being full of creativity and infinite potential. So I like that work.
What was the age bracket?
Oh, tiny. Sometimes I got 2.5 year olds to
Oh,
13 at that school. And then some of those students would come back to me later and would prepare them for scholarships or auditions or just general confidence for interviews. So it was a lovely work to do.
I
that
think
sounds so
that's
much fun.
important. And I mean, in school, it should be taught what you're doing, and it isn't. And I think it's important what you're doing.
I only know two other people who are doing that, although I do also know a school in Ecuador, which is, I think it's still alive. And that inspired me 30 years ago when I had my first child. He's now 32. And that was in Ecuador. And she was, what was she? He was Swiss and she was German. And he was half Ecuadorian. So they went there and built this incredible school, giving children self-determination within a beautiful prepared environment, and that kind of keyed off this whole process in me, and I wanted to be doing that. So when I worked with groups of 12 small 4-year-olds, the
Mhm.
aim was to actually, there are ways to give them a voice so that their soul comes through. So these incredible messages would come into the room, previous lives, the stories would weave together in our acting group. It was basically, you were sort of giving the kind of therapy that most 50-year-olds seek, but you were
Mhm.
allowing the 4-year-olds to just explore it as a normal thing. It's a story coming through their voice.
So, I mean, over here in the United States, of course, our public schools, which you would call regular schools, not private schools. We would call your public schools private schools, but anyway.
We have
So
absurd names.
here in our public schools, everything is regimented. Now every teacher has a script, and they're teaching to prepare the kids for the test, that the entire school will get gigged on, but professionally, financially, etc., and like firing principals and teachers if the kids don't perform well on these exams. It has nearly destroyed the relationship between kids and teachers to the point where they're having trouble maintaining discipline because all they can do is this rote script where everybody performs a part, but you're not allowed to be an individual teacher. It is the single thing that I am looking forward to dying from the ending of our Department of Education.
Yeah. I
Individual
mean, as though they're robots, as though they're a hive mind robot.
We want people.
They are a soul.
And you can see the damage being done to the kids.
It was bad enough in those old-fashioned disciplinarian systems, wasn't it? Where if you didn't tout the rule, then you were disciplined and wrapped around the finger knuckles and whatever else. But just to take any kind of individuality and creativity is, well, that was the dark agenda, killing the soul. And people don't even know they have it. So that agenda, bringing back all the tools, you know from everyone you've ever spoken to and all your interests, I know you two will know that remote viewing is actually natural. Telepathy is natural. Empathy is natural. Imaginative foretelling, forecasting, for conscious creation is natural. Going into the past, which is something I love to do at the moment, little trigger moments, bring in some more energy there and you change the trajectory. All these things are completely normal and natural, but they're kind of woo, because that's been systematically seeded out. So I want to have a long life so that I can see these things in children's lives. And the idea is, I like the inspirational side of things, that people will come and spend time, feel around ideas and concepts, and then go away and do it their own way. This unique, beautiful soul system that we've got. Who knows how many billion real souls we got here, but we got a few, enough to repopulate the creativity of humanity.
I have a question. You just spoke about going back in time and tweaking things to change. Can you talk about, that's interesting to me, and in many different ways, but can you talk about that?
Yeah, I really love that. It was, when you try out something on a whim, like, maybe it's possible, let's see. So there's a thing called family constellations that Bernd Hellinger, who's German, but practiced around the world, created. And it was about a certain order, hierarchy, and structure where loving energy was in the right place in a family. And you could work with a group of strangers and they would represent the different members of the family, literally standing in places, and then be asked to use their empathic experience to say how they felt in relationship to someone else. And I did some training in that back in 2000 and loved it. And, I do all this acting work because improvisation is that massive wave of soul energy coming through. It's new. So this thing of, I call it cosmic constellations, is literally, I realized just trying it, playing with it, that when you speak to a soul, present or not, so I could speak to the child, whereas I got the mother on Zoom and we could be talking to her child's soul, and then let him play through, you get his voice, his word voice, not just the tone of his voice, but also it's like playing his character. And you allow the soul to say, hey, give me a moment where we can go in and fix something, bring some new energy that would support you now. And the soul will take you to somewhere, a specific moment. And it's just like, I did this with one friend where it was literally, he grazed his knee, as a child. Not particularly traumatic, but the father was just cold, reserved, no emotion, no emotional support. But he was the parent in that moment. In this alteration, going back in time that the soul had directed us to, a lot of love could be given. And I don't do it. I say, prime creator. I use that. I like that term rather than God. I like to go to origins, the big everything, and bring in energy. And it's palpable, you can feel it through your body. And then observe what happens. And so this father who was present did a whole lot of new things he'd not done before. A few words were spoken from him. And so I allow that character to come through me and I play that. And so what happened was 80 minutes later after this work, right? So it was just a son and his father acting a little warmer, a little more emotionally available. 80 minutes later, that man who's now 60 was talking so warmly about his father. He didn't know I'd done that work at the time. And 80 minutes later on a podcast show, he was unusually talking so warmly and affectionately about his father, very vulnerably. And that's where I realized, oh my God, this does stuff. The first time I'd done the Bernd Hellinger's family constellations, I had my brother, who hadn't spoken to me for 3 years, call me 30 seconds after I left the room from that event. So it is fascinating. It's obviously working on the quantum realm where time is
right.
It's not linear. So you can do tiny things, but the soul tells you what to do. You bring in a lot more energy, source energy. Usually it's love. And then you watch the trajectory of what happens. Sometimes one person will talk to someone else in a loving way, and it's a tiny knock-on effect. It's like that butterfly and James Gleick with chaos theory.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that makes me want to cry.
Yeah,
I want to do this. Oh my God, there's so many things with my parents, and even me as a parent. Honestly,
You can almost do it now, but usually it's a bit tricky because here we are live and we don't know each other, although, we can feel each other. But sometimes it's nice to get into a more meditative state. I don't do much preparation, but sometimes I'll just, close my eyes and then I can feel in. And then what I find is whoever I'm working with, if it was with you, Lala, then you would start to feel.
I'll come to you after this, yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's do it. Let's do a session. I'll have you on my show, please. Yeah, I'd love to do that.
I think everybody should do it. There's so much heartache in the world, and which means anger, and then your soul is blocked.
Heartache, anger, and fear. Too much.
It's amazing.
So sometimes you can't evoke change with the other person. Sometimes, like I have a father who is really switched down completely. And sometimes if I do a spiritual clearing of him, I might have him for 48 hours and then he goes back, reverts to type and takes on a whole lot of dark energy again. So I did something recently where I realized I was doing it for me, to see him as a pure soul. I wanted to see that part of him so that I could feel peaceful with him, no matter where he chose to be now. So there are different layers, but who knows what that's unlocked in him. Tiny specks of water can slowly erode a rock. I mean, this is how it works.
Oh yeah.
Oh yes.
It's not exactly what you're talking about, but my parents are passed, and there was something my mom struggled with. She had mental illness, and it really hurt me. And I was talking about it to myself. And that night, she came to me in a dream and she showed me purple with hyacinth flowers. I can't pronounce it. But when I woke up, I Googled it and it said forgiveness. And on the flower, on the vase, was a cat. She kind of had a cat hoarding problem. I don't talk about it, and that she was always angry at me. She never admitted anything because it really was an issue with, and that made me feel so good that she heard my heart and came to me in a dream and sent me a sign. So this is real. I mean,
yeah,
our energies are linked forever, Yeah.
I had a friend who, she had severe cancer. She managed to fight it off because she was very gifted in homeopathy and acupuncture and herbalism, but she just had an impossible family. It was, the guy she was married to, it was a nightmare. So she staved it off for 9 years and then it came back rapidly again. Now, I hadn't seen her for a few years, and I suddenly had a dream of her, and she was skipping, and she had a kind of swingy dress. It was kind of knee length, and it meant I could see her calf muscles. Okay, you think, well, what's that about? You know, she was skipping and picking flowers and saying hi to me, and I thought, hang on, what's on? Because in the first round of cancer, she'd had a big chunk of her calf had been removed, her calf muscle. So I knew she'd transitioned because she was showing me that she was perfect again. Her body was whole and restored. And so I messaged the husband, and he was in dire upset. He was in such dire straits, but I knew she'd gone. And I told him about the vision because I knew it would help him. So yeah, this timelessness, and it's just another octave. That's what we got to remember. So you can still work with anyone who's passed. You can. And in the same way, you know, there's a lovely woman, Megan, it's not Kelly, but she has a book called Spirit Babies. And she talks to the unborn children coming in, even before they've actually incarnated, before they've even been conceived. Sometimes the parents who really want children, or even the children who've spontaneously been miscarried, she will talk with them. So yeah, there's no limit. You can go back or forward, and that's what we got to remember, how much more flexible we are as minds.
Oh yeah. Well, that goes into, he's a science guy, and that it's linked in your world too, because of dimensions and all the words I don't know how to pronounce. But that's why but it's amazing that he's even open-minded about this, because a lot of scientists are so, what's the word?
Okay, so look, living with you is a non-stop experience, telling me that science and scientists mostly have their head, well, I better not finish the sentence. But they've got it wrong. They won't accept data. That makes them bad scientists.
Yeah. But now they're more into it now, I think.
It is changing, but man, when Planck in 1901 said, science progresses one old dead scientist at a time. The old biases, etc., have to pass away with time as new, younger people who are more malleable with better neuroplasticity come along, and they can accept the new idea more easily.
That is not even the minds are better, is it? It's that the system, they're not allowed to go beyond. I remember chatting to a wonderful physicist. He was at a 5-day conference, and I just happened to be at the same place, so there was a whole bunch of them. And he was a lovely, warm guy, and we were talking about quantum physics, and he said, yeah, well, the thing is that that's just the next set of crutches for us to walk with. It's still not the truth. It's just as near as we're allowing ourselves to get.
Try to walk outside the box, and first your peers turn away from you, then the funding sources don't fund you, and then you don't have any students, and then you're without a reason for your job. I mean, it's horrible how that system works.
But you know, it's not even just in science, Bob. It's, you know, I joke that I did the PhD so that I could do what I want.
Exactly.
So even when I did that PhD at university, the guy who was my viva, the examination, you know, there was my big fat book, carefully researched, lots of experiments with children in schools and all kinds of stuff. And he said, look, I do not agree with a single word of it. But you argued your case with such clarity and passion that I have to give it to you. So, you know, so I've always just, by the skin of my teeth, been able to do what I've done. And, you know, God's grace plonked me in places that they needed an acting teacher. So I had to not only teach singing, but also acting. And then I got to do all the emotional intelligence and creativity. So, you know, nothing traditional. I couldn't do any linear paths with my way of thinking. So I understand it's never got any grants, just like those scientists. Yeah.
In my first first serious job as a technical person, I was put in a box by those who were superior or had seniority over me. And it quickly became clear that for me to achieve the freedom to pursue my own path someday, I had to go get a PhD because nobody else got respect in the environments in which I chose to live and work. So I went and got a PhD, and I am the luckiest guy I know. I went for a summer experience, and before the summer was over, they said, we really don't want you to leave. Hang around. But look, the way it works here, you got 3 years to prove yourself, and if you don't, you're fired. So they approved me for the long-term staff before a year was over. It was the perfect fit. No one told me what to do. They would bring in people and have talks, and you and others could decide to work on what they were talking about or not. It was up to you. And I don't know anybody who has had this except for the people at this place. And it was not only that, it was for the intelligence community. They had such a place. Operating for defense agencies in the intelligence community, and we had total academic freedom. I don't know. I can't even think of another place like it. It was.
That is
was
interesting, because normally as you know, in culture, it's sort of associated with the artist. The artist is the one with great freedom. And actually, not really, because they're so formulaic, I remember I was working with a brilliant studio in Notting Hill. They were promoting artists, bringing them forth so they could sell their work properly to corporations and so on. And I was at this vernissage, and there were people talking and looking at the art, and no one could explain the work except me. And I thought, how is this so? How is it that I'm the only one who's able to feel the artist, see what's there, make the connection, and then bring forth the idea? And the artist would go, yeah, how did you know that? It's like, well, I just.
So the one artist I can think of that blew up the world while they were alive and made it, was celebrated, etc., is Jackson Pollock.
Ooh, I like him.
That's the one I can think of that blew it all and succeeded, but while he was still alive to enjoy it.
But I think he got bought out.
Van Gogh was dead before he was accepted.
Yeah. Well, the other ones, as you know, they're like dear old Hunter. It's just money making machine. It's not really anything, is it? And so people don't realize how much they're being manipulated in art, or what to appreciate and all that nonsense. I just put a post up about fashion. Beautiful women's bodies are not the trans men bodies that they put on the runways. So we're all schooled to thinking a woman should be tall and straight and certain clothes. And none of the clothes you buy will look good on you because they're designed for that, not for us real women. And, the amount of layers and layers and layers of conditioning. I love so much, Bob, that you talked about this intelligence community having freedom of creativity, because if we don't really have it in the art, and, I scrape through to manage to keep my freedom, and there are a few of us, but we have to bring that idea back to humanity, what actual freedom tastes like and feels like, and what the work is of it. And it's only the tough ones who've managed to kind of, not tough, not hard tough, I mean kind of wiry, flexible, who've managed to kind of weave our way around the world and stay true, stay clean, clear. We've got to start talking a lot more about what creativity and freedom actually are.
Absolutely. It's not a cage. It's the allow to let your spirit, mind, etc. soar. Look, let the bird free. If it was meant to, it'll come home.
I have a question about nature and plants and healing. Can we talk about that? I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Look behind her. You think she doesn't know that?
Yes.
I was in the holistic and herbal medicine and he hugged trees. I mean, my dad was a very kind man. So I think it's important. Nature is important with healing and everything.
So
We had this raised bed, and first try, she's not used to it. So she had a raised bed, and the plants died. So she put her heart, soul, and energy into this organite pyramid. And she says, okay, I'm going to go put it out of the bed. Everything's dead. She says, I'm going to put it out there. So I didn't look for 2 days. Every plant came back to life.
Almost every.
Almost every plant in that bed came back to life from the dead.
Yeah, but plants can feel love and energy. And
yeah, I mean, did you read The Secret Life of Plants? That
No.
book, 1976. To Americans and Germans, I think they studied what the Russians had done, because the Russians were open to this kind of science, much more than we were, holistic science. And they basically allowed plants to speak through electrodes. So it's a little bit like what Vida Austin's doing with water, showing how water is this organic computer.
Yeah.
But then they were putting electrodes on plant leaves, and then putting 2 plants, one in one room with rock music, heavy metal, the other one without it, and seeing how they reacted to each other, or they'd burn one and the other one would scream. And, you know, they were bringing forth the idea that plants are conscious. Right. So this, yeah, I had a professor in the States who was British, and he said, just talk to the plant, tell them what you want. And it's that simple, because we've forgotten that we're part of them. Their communication, we can talk with them, we can listen to them, we can party with them. You know, we're told you're not allowed to pick flowers. If you do, they're endangered species. How dare you pick a wild flower? And instead it's you pick the flower and you say, wow, you're amazing. Thank you so much. I'm taking you home to look at your beauty. And every time you look at that flower's beauty and gorgeousness, you're feeding the one out there in nature, because that's how the realm of entanglement works. So we just forgotten. We just so separated into these little.
Well, there are baser needs. Without them, we'd have no oxygen to breathe.
No problem.
I mean, the miracle of chlorophyll and photosynthesis being quantum to its base is pretty amazing.
Yeah, they give you the equation at school, but no one really tells you how it works. In the same way, you know, human bodies, it's done in the mitochondria somehow. You know, no one knows how energy.
Some miracle. Well, I mean, look, if you don't understand, for a photon to strike that chemical and it excites something in the chemical that produces oxygen and sugar, etc., if you don't understand that photo interaction with whatever it is quantum mechanical, you better go back to do a little reading.
Yeah, I'm just preparing a little children's book. I'm putting all my books together on a publishing site now. And this little book, I drew the illustrations about 20 years ago. It's that old. And now I'm bringing it into, you can do some lovely things now with layers of images. It's called Gabrielle the Raindrop. And it's about the hydrological cycle, but it's seen through the eyes of this conscious little being. Well, he goes through levels and stages of consciousness as he's let go from his parents, the clouds, and traverses through the skies, down through the ground, and comes back. And it's for smaller children, but so that they are understanding the consciousness of water. And the next level of books, I'm writing a lot of children's books at the moment, because I realize that there is this void in real stuff, you know. So the fae being who came to me, I've got incredible photographs because of work I was doing clearing earth energy sites. So I've been doing a lot of stories about her. But I want to be talking to children about, go talk to the wind and say, please, can you move? I want the sun today. And you'll get it in 20 minutes time. Children are so pure-hearted, they will get it. It works for me every time.
When we moved in here, we put up cameras. Well, I won't go over the long story for the reasons, but we put up cameras, and pretty soon we were looking at fairies. So I says, I don't have a clue what to do, but I think I've heard that, you know, you should feed them flowers and other things and make gifts to them. So I went out there and put these flowers on this plate, and no wind or anything else. they took them. They took them.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, there are physical reactions, interactions that we're not aware of. I mean, for me, the Fae are that sort of parallel evolution of yeah, let's call them humans, because they're humanoid. They're just on they're on the etheric level, so call it an octave above. And so scale is very different for them because they're dimensionally different. But their
A
consciousness.
lot of people don't understand all that the different dimension quantum mechanically means it's a different frequency and energy. All of those three terms in quantum mechanics are synonymous.
Yeah.
Because people don't understand that. Thank you, de Broglie.
And then resonance, to understand what resonance means. So if you are resonating with them, it means a part of you has regained its consciousness on that level. So well, let's, see what levels we can find within ourselves. Who can we converse with next? The stars.
We do not explore enough to find those resonances.
I think it's important that you're writing those books for kids.
So do I.
I think it's amazing. It's because this is what you're writing about is our real world. I know people like to believe it's not, but it's our true world that you're writing about, and I think that's important.
A lot of people think the real world is the math and the equations that describe it, but that's our impoverished way of writing down a symbolic description of what reality is already doing. It's just, how do I describe what reality is doing? Even though we know it's not all the way to the bottom. Or what is fundamental in reality, I believe, I think you do, I know she does, is consciousness. Consciousness is at the bottom.
When I was looking, when this fairy being who I call Elfie, okay, when she appeared, I was just blown out of my mind. I was so excited. And so I started having a lot of conversations with her, telepathic. And then, I'd just get the impulse, just go on a walk and take your camera and take some pictures. And then I saw a different kind of orb with very, very geometric formations, and it felt it was different to her. So I went home and had a conversation with that and found out it was something else. So it wasn't the Fae beings. They named themselves Tuatha de Danann, which is that fairy folk. It's in fact what we use in Britain. But they also said they were these gardener greys. They're almost synthetic, but they had souls. And the fascinating thing was, the reason they said there were these geometric formations was because it's almost like they're punching. They described it like a shoelace, where you've got the holes where the lace goes through. So they were punching through the dimension of the leather through a hole to be seen by us. They were like peeking through like a telescope. And he said that what they do is the geometry and the mathematics, the mathematical modeling behind matter. So you've got the consciousness creating, and they're the ones that go, and they do the mathematical modeling behind, which turns into the leaves and the trees and the wind and the waters and us, which I found fascinating. And I'm always trying to find other people who, I can build a kind of corresponding universe to understand it more. But there's a lot of information, and it's about, finding the pieces that correlate and seeing that they all have a sort of integral fit. So that's I think a big task for our next little future.
Well, that's
right on the money.
Blew my mind, dude.
That's right on the money. Right on target bullseye.
Now I never used to believe in phase. I mean, I always thought it was cool, but until we saw it was on camera in front of our house, and I saw it, and I was like, oh my God.
What I couldn't believe is they showed us themselves on camera, and they did it on purpose. Because they don't do stuff like that except on purpose.
But they saying to me that they're going to be doing that a lot more. That whole drone thing, we know that a lot of that was mechanical and deep state technology and some maybe white hat technology or whatever. But there were a lot of organics there. I wish I had the pictures, but they're over there. so I can't show you. I've got like pictures of I call them sky bikes because that's what.
No, you can grab it if you want to.
It's up to you.
I'll
It's
go
up to
grab
you.
it. I'll go grab a
Go,
picture.
yeah, we're easy.
All right, I'm gonna get a sky bike for you.
You don't get demerits for leaving the camera.
Cool.
A couple. You should have her on a couple times.
Yeah,
You know, like
go
maybe
for it.
once
Whenever,
a couple months.
whenever you
Because
want
this
to.
is fun.
I can tell you're liking it.
Hell yeah. Oh, I'm sorry.
So this is just a watercolor, but I hope
Oh,
you can
yeah.
work it out.
Oh, yeah.
But there are two beings there because the different images that I had, she was showing. So I've got, if you can see, it's a bit tricky, but there's one leaning out towards this bush, and that's who I call Elfie.
The other one is much easier to see. That one's much easier to see. Yeah.
Okay.
But,
And
yeah,
then
they're apparent.
and this little bike thing, I kept seeing it in all sorts of different, when I took stills of the movie that I got, it was a short couple of movies of her, and I was looking at all the stills, and they have this round front piece here. All of them have this round front piece, and they have a kind of an X shape at the back. And then, of course, as soon as I started seeing that, and it was the drone time where people were starting to see things, I was being sent lots of images from lots of people. So it's a thing. They seem to have sky bikes. It's like a little vehicle that they get around on. And it just sounds nuts, but not. Because
Yeah.
You don't have to convince us. We see the weird stuff in the sky.
Well, we have pictures of different crafts, and
I've never seen pictures like
these. They each have this circle with them on it, like an arm, like it's something's holding up the circle. So what you're saying makes sense. It's interesting, and I always wondered what that meant. You know.
Let me see if I can get you a real fairy image from this.
Yeah.
First
cool.
sighting.
We can screen share.
If I go to one of my fairy stories that's on here. So I wrote these ostensibly for my granddaughter because she's just 4. And when I told her about the fairy, it was so moving, her response. She kind of went into a very soft, vulnerable place. And this girl is a powerhouse. You know, she can be full on power. But when I told her about the fairy, her little face was like, whoa. And she went over to her desk and started to draw, and then kind of showed me the image because I'd shown her a picture. It just instantly moved her. And that was so extraordinary to see that impact this little girl, because she could feel the resonance of this. I'll show you this one first. You know, bear in mind, these are as illustrations for a book. So this was a still. Can you just see this? This was the day she appeared to me. And there was this white line in the sky. Can you see that kind of? Yeah. And there's a little blue dot here. And at the time, I just thought, oh, cute. It's an orb. How nice, you know. And then I looked, and this is a good one. Again, you know, it's so difficult to show in focus because when you blow it up.
Oh, yeah. Well, we see stuff like that all the time.
Yeah. And when you look at enough of these stills, you start to see the image and the shapes and what's going on. And there can be up to about 5 different beings on those vehicles.
Yeah, we see these balls of energy with little deformations in them, and we look. Usually, there's one dominant face, and all through the rest of it are much smaller faces. Yeah, we find that absolutely fascinating, and I don't care who wants to call it pareidolia. I don't care. We know better.
Well, some of the orbs, I think orbs are fascinating, and now I'm really going to have to look into it because some of them look very different. And so in my mind, it's either an alien or a ghost, but now I know, no, it's something else to look into. So that's interesting. I didn't know that. I mean, even in our world that we're in, there's still blinders on.
Of course,
you know. So I think this is cool.
I've spent nearly 60 years with blinders on before they were pulled off.
But the thing is, you know, as children, we all knew about fairy stories, didn't we? I mean, Lala, did you read fairy stories when you were a girl?
Yeah. I loved them.
You did too, Bob. You know, I ate them all up. That was what I did. I read fairy stories. And so it was just a lovely heart food. And then I had to kind of put that on the shelf because obviously fairies aren't real, you know. But I knew there were nature spirits because I was the American Indian in me, you know, my other lives knew and honored and remembered all of these living beings. And then you get the stories of the inner earth beings and the origin of humanity, and all these different testimonials, the Hopi with the ant people, the white Nordics, and different cities within Earth, what Earth is, etc., etc., and kind of piece it all together. And finally, we got people like cute little JP, who wears the mask, who talks to Dr. Michael Salla, talking about his experiences with some of these people, because he has obviously some kind of biology that enables him to transition to different octaves. And there are a few humans, it seems, who have that. And so this experience is going to start becoming, I don't know whether it'll be normal, but it's going to certainly be much more known.
So I think what our humanity and our planet and everything on it need is for us to get to a certain kind of critical threshold of people with open minds, right frequency, whatever you want to call it, enlightenment, whatever. Then once you get sufficient numbers, it just goes boom, and all of a sudden there's an avalanche.
I'll be right back.
Okay.
The dog's too quiet. So.
Yeah, I don't know where she is, and we haven't seen her. She's not walking around. Okay.
Yeah, my cat's.
Yeah. So we see stuff quite a bit in our skies, like daily. So we got these detection devices for, quote, UFO detection. And there are days when, you know, you're supposed to get a few dozen if you have an event, like April the 4th and April the 3rd. It was over 1,000 alerts each of those days. And we saw all sorts of stuff in the sky. It was
energetically, things shifted, didn't they? Because that was Trump's day, April the 2nd. So all that anticipation, expectation, and then there's some relief. And so, of course, everything would have shifted upwards on a general scope. The frequency vibration measurement systems, that's what you've got to work on, you know, Bob. Those are the kind of things we need. I wrote some books for children a few years ago. Like this is a second book. Of course, it's backwards, isn't it?
Well, vibration, yeah.
Vibration works. This is the second one, and this was about. I called it Zog, okay, but it turned out it was our Earth in the future, talking to children now. So I had all this future technology coming through me. Some of it, a few bits of it, I could find around the planet that already existed, like roots being programmed to grow with their auxins into a certain structure, and you could cut them off and use them as a fence, you know, things like that. Some of that was existing, but the rest, I was channeling all this lovely information of the future. And these kids in the future Earth, they use a little organic computer which tells it can find the frequency of anything. You know, it finds that resonant frequency of whatever it is it's communicating with or measuring. We know those things can exist. I'm sure they do somewhere in the secret space program too already. But that's probably not that far away. I suspect that's like 5 years, maybe 6 years, till we have that kind of frequency calibration detection.
We have to. So I believe when we can. So I'm now working on the following design of the following experiment. You know, Penrose and Hameroff have produced this overall theory without a lot of stuff or surrounded with a theory, a proposition that the microtubules in our neurons are the actual place where the conduct of all the dynamics in them is the connection to consciousness. So now I'm doing this experiment design, hoping to do the actual experiment, where there is a concept inside of quantum field theory for how that would connect your inside quantum state to an outside quantum state and back and forth and manipulate each other. So it would be how even though you were shielded in a lid room, you would still be able to connect to the stuff that was outside it. And it's called the Aronoff-Bohm effect.
So is that linked to, you know, Nassim Haramein, when he's talking about the inside of the proton? Inside every proton is the center of the universe. It's like you go inside there and you're actually in the center of the universe, because it's not even entanglement. It's probably more resonance than entanglement. It's that quality and the center of the universe are the same. So that you have almost like a holographic everything in every single tiny atom. And, you know, trees are like our lungs in all the branching, but inside the neurons that look like our lungs or trees, and the cosmos, it's got its branches. So once we understand this, like similitude, we're going to start to understand that it's just, we're just tuning the dial. Yeah, that's that.
This branching, just a little science for a minute. This branching that looks nearly fractal in the universe, but is, you know, everything's clumping along these, look like limbs and branches and stuff. It is so different from the assumptions that are false that we're having to rewrite our entire cosmology theory, because the assumption everything is uniformly distributed kills it. It's just, well, you can't have that, and the two things work. So we're having to completely rewrite cosmology. And guess what? Dark energy is disappearing. It's not really real.
Yeah.
Really?
You know, the Avatar movie that people are saying, oh, that's a documentary of our planet with the giant trees and the way they interfaced with all of creation. And then that's so brutal, scary, wasn't it? That horrible military destruction force that just ramshot over everything. That was so disturbing. But the beauty of that, to remember on this planet, the trees are the secret to everything. You know, go and talk to a tree, put your hand on it, or all these small things have far more significance. Yeah, it's lovely. I mean, it means that the children become significant again, instead of, you know, you're the last thing on the list. We can take you and munch you up for dinner.
If every human planted 2 trees, our carbon dioxide problem would dissipate.
Well, we don't actually have a carbon dioxide problem.
Well, we have too much.
Well, it's greening. Places are greening that weren't green before 25 years ago. So
yeah, but never mind. We're also wiping out species. In other words, I realize it's a natural thing. I would rather us remove the impact humans have had burning things.
Well, it's just because they burnt it without thinking. So
yeah,
I
know why they did it.
Vegetable garden. Someone's burning a bonfire and ruining the atmosphere for everybody, whereas they should just store it and let it be hedgehog hedges and break it up and make it mulch. You know, that's the sensible thing to do. Right. But they're not thinking about what the fire does and what the smoke does. And it's fine to burn, but then just prepare for it. Do the burning in the right way. Capture the heat. You know, use a filtration system. For all means, burn. You need to in cold climates, but it's just we're not thinking in a system. It's that isolation principle again of nonsensical so-called science that is just despairing, isn't it? Not the real stuff, not the Hopi Indians and the Lakota and the Cherokee, and you know they still remember most of this stuff.
Look, it fundamentally bothers me that almost all of the opposition couldn't work if it were not for the greedy who are making money off the burning, because they're funding the opposition.
Yeah, they're funding the idiots, aren't they? Or the blackmailable. I mean, that's the sad thing. And then humans get the bad rap. It's not actually humans, it's that nasty little group doing its manipulation. Yeah. I mean, so exciting to think we might get rid of them. I mean,
it would be lovely if we just learned to behave a little better.
Well, overall, you know, in Britain, things are really nuts right now. I don't know whether you look at any news about little places.
Yeah, I look at BBC fairly regularly when they have
don't watch the BBC. Scary.
I also look at Times.
Yeah, that's the sad thing, that anything mainstream is just lies these days. Everything.
Yeah, that's definitely true here. But it's in the United States, the mainstream's divided into Camp A or Camp B. And Camp A gives news stories Camp B never covers. Camp B does news stories that Camp A never covers, and each of them lies about the other constantly,
Well,
every
at least you've got something. Which in Britain, it's just all lies. So you can't trust any mainstream publisher, any mainstream media at all. And then if you're brave enough, you go to X and you have a look and see what's happening. And it's interesting tactics to wake this very, very sleepy, cute, super conservative place up, and ultimately it will, and quite dangerous things potentially going on in this little country. But everyone's so comfortable, and the prices go up. They're like the frogs in that hot water that just gets a little hotter. And it's like, to make a Brit revolt is very hard, really difficult to do. And so things have to be pushed quite far, I think, in this country for people to want to kind of wake up and see and change. And the mainstream narrative has definitely woven their magic here.
Oh yeah. Well, we don't want them to decide to re-empower the king and have him open the tower. There's been enough heads lopped off.
The days when I thought he was a good guy.
Oh well.
Cute, innocent.
You realize he has lived his entire life in that cauldron. He never once had a choice from the day he was born as to how he would grow up.
Yeah, you could say that. I don't think that's Charles, actually, because I know quite well what he looks like. I was a little girl in Windsor, as where I went to school, and we used to wave at the royals every year when they went to Ascot along the long walk. And when I was a kid, I think it was 8, the Queen was in Waitrose. That's one of our nice food shopping markets, and she had a headscarf on and a corgi. And I saw her while I was choosing yogurt for my mum. I thought, hang on, what are you doing here? And it was the Queen. She used to take little trips out sometimes just to be a normal person. I don't think she was ever a normal person.
Oh, Charles will never do that.
They're not people really, and they're not good, sadly. But then there are a lot of people like that in Britain, of that. I just call it this club because it's endemic. Anything successful belongs to that, willingly or blackmailed. It just, once you just can't not see it.
Well, look, don't feel alone. The United States is covered up with these kind of secret things going on that nobody will talk about, and it's hideous.
Yeah, piece by piece. I mean, how do you catch the monkeys?
Question, real quick. I like reading about conspiracy. So with the royal family and the bloodline, and you said you don't think they're human. So my brain goes, well, is she being literal? Do you think there's something else, another type of entity or being behind that little small group that's in control and kind of, taking?
Are they being controlled?
Definitely. So I had a horrible divorce. My ex-husband was German. Did quite well when he lived in Britain, did quite well when we lived in the States for a year. We went back into Germany and kind of just disappeared into depression. And then I wanted to divorce him. It was just a nightmare. And he'd then turned nasty. And what happened was he was then entity possessed. And I didn't really know about this at the time. But there was this one moment where I was flying back with the children because he had won custody, and they were shutting down because they knew they were getting ready to be with him. Kind of black and white world, utterly controlled. Okay, so it's like the opposite of everything you can feel that I stand for. And I saw him, so-called this human who wasn't anymore, at the airport. And it was so strange because the face that greeted me was, evil, I think is probably the right way to describe it. When you have joy in sadness, joy in distress, all of the negative things was feeding this entity. So that was someone who was very low energetically, my ex-husband, and then was completely energetically possessed by something very dark. When I lived in Berlin for years, because he was German, I also met an entity that I knew wasn't human going into a media corporation office. I was there for an audition, and I could feel this strange presence walk past me. A being, you know, touchable, tangible, tall, dressed very smart, expensive clothing, had this kind of strange aura of power. Now, I didn't know anything about reptilians or really much about entity possession at the time, and sort of maybe a little tiny bit of that. I could just feel this strangeness, and he could feel that I could feel it. He turned and looked at me, and I just got that impact as something I did not like. So I've got little puzzle pieces along the way. And so what I see is that there are, you could call them fourth dimensional entity, or just, again, more semi-etheric beings. So that just that frequency is slightly divided from us, and they can take into a human body, take it over and use it whenever they want to, sometimes permanently and sometimes impermanently. And that is what goes on with all of them.
Yeah, this past weekend, I met one of those in San Francisco, and we ran around and tried to do something, and the person disappeared. Just poof.
Yeah, I mean, that's
witnessed by 4 people.
Yeah. This, you know, that's going to blow most people's minds.
It had black eyes. It had black eyes.
No wonder San Francisco, a difficult place right now, isn't it? Energetically, it's been a real battleground, torn apart from what I see and hear.
I didn't go because I'm with all the planes crashing. My anxiety's too high for that crap. So he went, and it's interesting because when he said he saw it was an Asian woman with black eyes, dude. Like a month ago, I have visitation dreams. And in my dream, the same woman showed up with the black eyes and did this creepy grin. And it blew my mind that he said that. And I'm just thinking, okay, what are these things? What's going on? So it's interesting. I think I talked about this last night. The dream realm is very interesting to me, and I'm trying to learn more about it. Are we over time?
Close to.
Oh, no.
We have to do another one to talk about dreams. I want to talk about dreams with you, Lana. That would be cool.
Come back. Come. She will arrange for you to come back. You're too entertaining.
Okay, that would be fun. I these kind of conversations are great, aren't they? That's why I started my Rumble channel a few years ago, because I was not getting these kind of conversations and I wanted them. So that's what this is here for, isn't it? These kind of mind melding sessions.
Our 2 most viewed outputs are X and Rumble. X is live and Rumble is later, but never mind. It's live on Rumble, live on X, and almost all of our viewers are in those 2 places. Like 90%.
That freedom thing again.
Yes, it is. Okay, how can people find you, and what do you got coming up?
So you can find me under Gnostic TV. I have a show there, New Earth Mamas, but you can probably put Dr. Isabel Aimee and you'll find me there. And I have The Heavenly Tea on Rumble. And my website is, now I know on the title of this video, because I saw it at the beginning, you put inspiration, and I love that word. But I got this word inspiration 2006, and it was my band name, and I use it a lot because it's about spirit. So my website is inspiration.biz. So it's just an I at the end instead of an Asian. And I'm on all social media all over the place. But yeah, Inspiration or Dr. Isabel Aimee, and you'll find me. And I love to work with people to wake that spirit soul part of themselves up again so they can start to pull all the bits back themselves.
Everyone, thank you for watching, and thank you
this was awesome.
Very much for being here.
Thank you for picking me up. I loved it. Well, it's not my bedtime yet.
She's the intuitive that arranges all our guests because she picks them, and they're always amazing, including you. Thank you, everyone, for being here. We look forward to seeing you at our shows next week.
See ya.